Hello. Today we'll begin a three-part series on mass casualty incidents. This will cover everything from the ICS structure, integrating with other agencies on scene, triage, treatment, transport, and a few other topics. It's no secret that we're seeing more and more mass casualty incidents. The ones that come to mind are obviously active assailant type situations, school shootings, mall shootings, things like that. But even last year we did see a few. But even in 2022, we saw a few. But even in 2022, we saw a couple of MCIs that weren't active assailant type situations. So we'll talk about that and also have a few case studies as we go through these trainings. So the objectives for part one will be, let's just simply define what is an MCI. We'll talk about the ICS structure, which many of us are pretty familiar with, but we'll break it down, especially looking at the EMS branch. And then we'll have a case study, which will look at the quadruple fatal crash on I-70 westbound in the fall of 2018, which many of us are still pretty familiar with. So we don't have to look too far back in time to think about a couple of MCIs that occurred in central Missouri. The first one was in June of 2022, and that was, of course, the Amtrak train crash in Mendon, Missouri. That obviously had a tremendous amount of patients. In total, almost 300 patients. Luckily, only 3 were fatal. Patients were transported by air, ground EMS, bus, POVs from the town and the county to hospitals locally and across mid-Missouri and across the state. As a part of that, EMS systems from Central Missouri were integrated into the. EMS agencies from across Central Missouri were called upon to integrate as a part of mutual aid, going up to Mendon and helping on scene there, transporting patients. And so this is something that didn't just impact the EMS systems up there, but really impacted a lot of people because it started to draw resources from outside areas. Another one that got a little bit of attention but wasn't that bad but could have been potentially much worse was not long after the train crash. This was in July of 2022 in Cole County, just outside of Jeff City. A chartered bus returning home from a trip with students on board ran off the road through the field, hit a couple of structures, and eventually, I believe, hit a telephone pole. In total, there were 28 patients. 14 of those were evaluated on site, 14 transported to local hospitals with minor or moderate injuries. Like I said, that could have been a lot worse, but luckily it wasn't. All right, so what is an MCI? Well, an MCI simplistically is an event that can or has overwhelmed the resources in that area. The World Health Organization defines an MCI as an event which generates more patients at one time than locally available resources can manage using routine procedures. This requires exceptional emergency arrangements and additional and extraordinary assistance. And so in some counties and in some rural areas and smaller systems, literally 1 or 2 patients who are very critical, what we consider red patients, that could be an MCI for that county. In our system, we would likely consider 5 or more what we would say sick patients. That would be considered an MCI for us. There are ProQA codes when someone calls 911 and goes through the ProQA system that will trigger an MCI type of response from joint communications. And that really depends on how many patients for that event. It could be 10 patients, 50, 100, 200. There are some benchmarks that will dictate dispatch codes and how things are dispatched through joint communications. So how should we prepare for an MCI in our system? So what type of MCI should we prepare for? Well, I think the one that comes to our mind is probably a multiple vehicle crash on US 63 or I-70. Those are our two main thoroughfares through Boone County, and we're already used to working crashes on there. We've had what we would consider MCIs in the past, and that's where we would kind of consider our most likely chance to have an MCI. The other one that really hasn't happened in our system but is very possible would be some type of active assailant event. That could come on the MU campus, one of the other smaller college or universities here in Columbia, or a local school. We have a regional airport here in Columbia, which is located in Ashland. There's also a fairly large airport in Jeff City. We could see an aircraft emergency at one of those locations, which would require a significant response. Natural or man-made disasters. Natural disasters, naturally we think about weather. What comes to many people's mind would be the May 22nd, 2011 tornado in Joplin, which demolished the majority of the city after an EF5 tornado went through. It killed over 160 people. We could see some type of geological event, like maybe an earthquake, especially more towards southeast Missouri, but potentially we would see impacts if there was a rupture on the New Madrid Fault. Chemical, trucks going down I-70 or 63 every day are carrying chemicals. So one of those spilling could potentially create a MCI. And then nuclear. We have nuclear waste that travels up and down 70 daily. We have a research reactor on the MU campus for nuclear energy. And then there's the Ameren plant out in Reform. And then there's the Ameren nuclear facility in Reform, which is in south central Callaway County. That could be something that we would be potentially dispatched to. The other one we probably don't think about a lot, but once we think about it, makes sense, would be a drug overdose at a house party. Someone gets a hold of a bad batch of drugs and starts passing around to all their friends, and now we have a frat party or a college party with a lot of patients. And so that would be one that we would consider, especially in a town with a large flagship state university and several smaller universities. So we have an MCI. What are we going to do now? Well, we're going to talk about some scene safety. So before we really engage into these scenes, we need to consider if it is safe for us. So vehicles, are they stabilized? This would be at vehicle crashes with extrication, vehicles on their side, on their top, things like that. Is law enforcement on scene? That would be for our active assailant events. That would be for people shooting at each other in the neighborhood on 4th of July. Is hazmat contained? When it comes to hazmat, we're going to let our partners with the fire agencies contain and mitigate those issues before we jump in and participate. And then mitigation of other obstacles. This could be road closures. This could be lines down over roads. This could be a variety of things. And so maybe we need to get Public Works involved to help make the scene safe. So there's some other things that we would have to consider that aren't necessarily guns and vehicles that are overturned, but we need to kind of consider the whole global picture before we start to engage in triage and treatment and eventually transport of patients on these scenes. All right, so we need to alert the hospitals. In Boone County, we would alert University and Boone hospitals. Depending on the type of call and how it's coded, potentially Joint Communications, if it's large enough, will already have alerted or will soon alert the hospitals in our county, and then potentially depending on the size, scope, and location of the event, hospitals in contiguous counties may need to be alerted. What comes to most of our minds would be the two hospitals in Jeff City. That would be SSM St. Mary's and Capital Region. But potentially people could go to Moberly or Macon as well if it was a large enough event. When we do alert the hospitals, we're not really asking them, hey, can we bring patients? We're really just giving them a heads up that says, hey, we have an MCI, this is what we have going on, be expected to receive patients. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up, but it's important to know that hospitals will need to be alerted, but they're going to be required to take patients during this event. Okay, so who's the boss? Well, we do this day in and day out, and that's established command. And that could be the first engine company on scene, it could be a chief officer, it could be the first EMS unit. We do this every day. We're going to establish command based off the name of the street, off of the business. If we're on I-70, we'll use the mile marker. Or if we're on 63 and we're close to a cross street, we can use that cross street. For most vehicle crashes, there's only going to be one IC. Initially, that could be an engine company, an ambulance, but then that's likely to quickly be passed off to a chief officer or some type of officer from the fire agency. Once command is established, you want to face-to-face, if you as the EMS crew establish it face-to-face with the incoming fire personnel, and they'll likely take command. If you arrive on scene after command's established, let's face-to-face with the IC, see what they need. And what we need to think about is that as this event grows in complexity and potentially in area, we're going to start to really engage more people in the ICS structure, which we'll talk about. These could be EMS supervisors, managers, clinical managers from the hospitals. One thing we need to remember is that the IC generally should not be engaged in patient care. Initially, if you're the first ambulance, first engine company on scene, there may be a little bit of that. But really, if you are the IC for the event, we should not be we should not be engaged in patient care. We should be looking at the event globally, trying to manage resources, manage personnel, manage patients. And so you should look to quickly hand off the IC responsibilities to somebody else when these events happen, so you can focus on the triage, transport, treatment of patients, and let somebody else with a little more experience handle that situation. Here's the EMS portion of the ICS structure. I believe all of us have ICS 100, 200, 700, and 800. Many of us have 300 and 400 as well, where we talk about all of this and a lot more. The simple part of it will be just having an incident commander. As that grows in complexity and scope, we will likely see it break off into an operations branch, and then under that branch would fall the EMS branch. Under the EMS branch, we would see treatment, triage, transport, and staging. The EMS branch would likely be overseen by a supervisor, an ambulance coordinator, clinical manager, someone of that magnitude. Triage, treatment, transport, staging could fall under a field supervisor, someone in the lead medic role, or a senior paramedic who has experience in these roles as well. And you can kind of see what falls under the different triage branches: treatment, transport, staging, etc. We'll talk about those a little bit more, but Communications, not too much we need to mention with this. We do this day in and day out, much like establishing command. This is just second nature to us. But when we get there, we need to figure out who we're talking to and what frequency. So if you're on scene, the first one, potentially EMS can establish a tactical channel, but likely that falls on the fire agencies who have tactical channels assigned to them. Gold for the Boone County Fire District, Ruby for Southern Boone, Brown for City Fire. So on events like this, they will likely have established a tactical channel, and then we just want to be listening as we come in on the dispatch channel of which tactical channel do we need to be on. Likely there will be several tactical channels. For a large MCI, there will probably be channels for different branches or groups that fall within the ICS structure. These could be local through joint communications, or they could be through MOSWINs, where we have some of the channels like V-Fire, 21, 22, and 23, Red, White, and Blue, JCIC, or other channels like that. So we need to monitor as we come in and try to figure out which channel we need to go to. And that's the same if we're being called to an MCI in a different system. Here in our here in our here in our system, we also, if we're going to an event that has to do with law enforcement, we should be monitoring. We should be monitoring the law frequency, main law, and that will involve placing one of your portable radios on law, keeping your truck radio on either EMS or the fire dispatch channel, and be able to listen to them so that we can hear when it's time for us to respond in or maybe disregard. So you're the first ambulance on scene. What do we need to do? Well, once we've determined that there is more than one patient and more than one patient that is potentially critical, we should start triaging these patients. If there's enough fire personnel on scene to triage, we should. If there's enough fire personnel on scene that aren't committed to tasks like fire suppression, hazmat mitigation, or vehicle extrication, we should see if we can utilize those folks to triage, and then we can take EMS folks to start a treatment area near the scene. If we realize we have several critical patients, we need to start requesting more units. That could be more units from our system, EMS units. That could be helicopters to the scene, or helicopters to the scene. But these could also be, once we get a handle on how many patients we potentially have, we need to start requesting more units. That could be EMS units from our system, potentially other systems outside our county as well. Helicopters, helicopters are something we could request as well. As we start requesting additional resources, we'll have to know where are we going to send those resources until they get to the scene, and that could be level 1 or level 2 staging, which we will talk about. So we hear level 1 stage a lot. That's in the size up of some of the fire agencies on scene, where they tell units coming to the scene to level 1 stage. And basically that is either at scene or near the scene, but uncommitted. And so if we level 1 stage for some type of a violent event, maybe a shooting with several patients in a neighborhood, we want to be maybe outside the neighborhood, maybe a few blocks over, where we're not committed, but that nobody knows that we're there, so that we're safe. We can get in easily, but also get returned to service easily as well. Level 2, we don't talk a whole lot about, but essentially what this is going to be is a separate location altogether, off-site from where the event is. And so an example of this would be, we have some type of active assailant at one of the high schools, maybe Battle High School, and the level 2 stage would be, so an example of level 2 staging would be, maybe we have an active assailant situation at Battle High School. We have a 2-lane road in and out of that facility, and we don't want to clog it up. And so the level 2 stage could potentially be at the Schnucks parking lot at the intersection of St. Charles and Clark Lane. Maybe an officer would be likely a staging officer would be assigned to that location to help move resources toward the scene as they're needed, but we would need to listen for where's level 1, where's level 2, and where are we going. Along with that, and back to communications, we need to listen to radio traffic as we're driving to the scene, figure out what frequencies we're on, where's our staging location, and any other information that's being passed along. So listen to law. If those events involve law, we need to be on the proper fire dispatch radio frequency, and we need to be listening for locations of where we're going to go. So what about mutual aid? Well, if the event is big enough, we need to consider ordering what resources we think we might need early and start getting them on the way to the scene. This could be resources from other counties that would come to our county in our system, potentially to come to the scene to transport patients. They could backfill units from our area to continue running the 911 calls that won't stop for this type of event, or to transfer patients from one hospital to another to get a higher level of care. That same thing will go for that same thing will go for helicopters as well. So a quick case study. This goes back to November of 2017 after a quadruple fatal crash on I-70 westbound in Boone County. This is a crash that many people remember, and several of us were there at the scene. The background of this call was a tractor trailer carrying vehicles caught fire just east of the St. Charles exit on I-70 westbound. Columbia and Boone County fire units responded. Smoke and steam from firefighting operations on the tractor trailer carrying car. Smoke and steam from firefighting operations caused zero. Smoke and steam from firefighting operations caused zero visibility over the highway. Because of that, and further east, a tractor trailer piggybacking 3 additional tractors hit at least 3 other vehicles at a high rate of speed, while the rest of traffic was stopped. Initial information said there were 4 patients, but could be more, and the initial dispatch actually came out as a vehicle crash with ejection. Here's a look at the tractor trailer that caused the fire. Here's a look at the tractor trailer that caused the fire, as seen from the back of Boone County Fire Station Number 1. This was before CFD and Boone County Fire got on scene. After that, you can imagine as they started firefighting operations, there was an immense amount of smoke and steam, which caused zero visibility. As a result of that crash, there was 1 passenger vehicle crushed between 2 tractor trailers, and 1 passenger vehicle smashed into the cable barriers. Here's a look at what you would have seen if you would have arrived on scene that day. This is the car that was smashed here into the cable barriers. There were 2 people in that car. This is the tractor trailer right here that caused the accident. This was one of the vehicles that was smashed between the tractor trailer and one in front of it. And then there was actually a patient, the driver of the tractor trailer piggybacking the other tractors was a patient as well. Once on scene, the vehicle. Once on scene, once on scene, the woman who was the female driver of the passenger vehicle crushed between the 2 trucks was confirmed J4. 1 person in the vehicle that was in the median was also confirmed dead. The driver of the tractor trailer in the crash and the second person in the vehicle that was in the median were both taken to University Hospital. The driver of the tractor trailer taken by University EMS, and the patient from the car in the median taken by Boone Health EMS. Those 2 would eventually succumb to their injuries. A total of 4 ambulances were dispatched to the call, and the call eventually was upgraded to a vehicle crash with extrication that a total of 4 ambulances were dispatched to the scene, and a total of 4 ambulances were dispatched to the scene, and a vehicle crash with extrication. A total of 4 ambulances were dispatched to the scene, and the call was upgraded to a vehicle crash with extrication that initiated a response from both CFD and the Boone County Fire Protection District, a total of 4 ambulances were dispatched. A total of 4 ambulances were dispatched to, a total of 4 ambulances were dispatched, and a total of 4 ambulances were dispatched, and a total of 4 ambulances were dispatched, and the scene. A total of 4 ambulances were dispatched, and the call was upgraded to a vehicle crash with extrication, which initiated a response from both CFD and the Boone County Fire Protection District.